Hello.
You are live.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to the IMA weekly show. I am Dr. Joseph Varon. I want to wish every single one of you a happy new year. As you know, I'm the Chief Medical Officer and co-founder of the Independent Medical Alliance. Thank you for joining us live tonight. The start of the year often brings a lot of pressure to reset everything. Everybody wants to feel, healthy. And sometimes everybody thinks that, you can do this overnight. It's a poof, I'm going to start healthy. I'm going to change all these years of bad habits. I'm going to fix it overnight. But for many people, that all or nothing mindset leads to a lot of frustration, burnout, and they basically give up by February. I was at the gym the other day on January 1st. I went to play racquetball. And then within a couple of days, you start seeing that nobody shows up anymore at the gym. So tonight, we're going to talk about a much different approach. We're going to talk about an approach that has to do with not restarting your health, but resetting your health. We're going to focus on small but substantial changes that actually can make long-term improvements in your health. I am very happy and very honored to be joined tonight by two of our IMA Senior Fellows that they're going to tell us and explain to us practical, evidence-based conversation about sleep, nutrition, movement, mindset, and even smart supplementations. No extremes or no quick fix that a lot of us want to get. Today is a particularly special night because as you know, we have a new series of dietary guidelines that they literally were just released today, and that makes many of us very happy as we finally can see a light at the end of the tunnel. So joining me tonight are two outstanding healthcare providers and IMA Senior Fellows with truly deep experience in integrative patient-centered care. First, I have Dr. Kristina Carman, who is a Senior Fellow in Nutritional and Holistic Health with the Independent Medical Alliance. She's a nutritional therapist. She's a naturopathic doctor, functional medicine practitioner, health coach. She's based in South Carolina. And her practice focuses mostly in approachable, sustainable, and personalized health strategies with a very strong emphasis on nutrition and lifestyle as medicine. I mean, I've worked with Kristina for a long period of time. She is just amazing. Also joining us, we have Mike Turner, who is a Senior Fellow in Integrative Medicine, also with the IMA. Dr. Turner is an integrative medicine physician who is a graduate from Stanford, Harvard Medical School, and the Mayo Clinic. But despite of all these huge accolades, he specializes in personalized care with focus on nutrition, supplementation, fitness, and mental health. Since 2020, Dr. Turner has treated a lot of patients with COVID, long COVID, cancer, vaccine-related injuries, using a lot of evidence-based protocols. He's also an avid researcher. He publishes a lot. He's a podcast host, and he's a frequent contributor to the IMA. I want to thank you both for being here tonight. But before we get into the meat of our conversation, I want us to take a look at today's announcement from Secretary Kennedy regarding the HHS dietary guidelines for Americans. Livio, can you show us the first clip, please?
Today marks a decisive change in federal nutrition policy, made possible by President Trump's leadership and the work of MAHA moms and public health advocates who demanded reform. Today, in accordance with President Trump's directive, Brooke and I will release the dietary guidelines for Americans 2025 to 2030, the most significant reset of federal nutrition policy in history. These guidelines replace corporate-driven assumptions with common sense goals and gold standard scientific integrity. These new guidelines will revolutionize our nation's food culture and make America healthy again.
That is, that's really interesting. That's amazing. Like I said, finally we see a light at the end of the tunnel. Now, having said that, Secretary Kennedy also posted a second video that I really enjoyed much more. And if you don't mind, Livio, can you please go ahead and show this one before we get started?
The pyramid doesn't work. We've already tried it.
It's upside down.
What?
Sir, the pyramid is upside down.
Turn the pyramid upside down.
You can't be serious. That would put butter and fat at the top
Flip
of the...
the damn food pyramid!
Get the president on the phone. Tell him to have some steak with his butter.
I don't know you guys, but I can watch that clip over and over and over and over again. And I know that, a lot of people are going to think that, hey, look at these doctors. They are so happy with South Park. But the fact is that it's so accurate, so freaking accurate. So with that in mind, why don't we go ahead and get started? I'm going to ask you, Kristina, if you don't mind sharing with us, again, beginning of the year, everybody has these New Year's resolutions. Everything is going to have to be done. These ambitious goals that, oh, yes, we're going to fix everything overnight. So talk to us.
So I think probably one of the most important things that I want to stress and that it comes across is that healthy goals, really, it's not about perfection or detoxes or extremes or rigid plans. And I think a lot of people this time of the year think that they actually have to do something really very extreme. It's not about fixing your body. It's more about, can you support your natural physiology and support yourself where you are right now? Because all of our position is very different, right? And it's about building resilience. So it's not, think about what it would be like, think about where you are now and how you can support your body. So for in your 10 years time self, and, making health actually easier to maintain. So it's actually integrated into your life, into your lifestyle, rather than it being like, oh, I'm just going to get healthy. And then really aligning those habits with real life. And I think that's, if we can center our conversations around that this evening, that would be really, really fantastic, because I think a lot of people get so confused and so overwhelmed with making big changes and too many things at once. And it shouldn't really be about that. It's about, that resilience and the consistency and finding things that you can actually really stick to that then become part of your everyday life. And that is what we're talking about when we're talking about health and health goals. And that's actually the nuts and the bolts of holistic health, right? When we're looking at the whole person. It's not these quick fixes and extremes and the detoxes that, they have a place maybe in some cases, but overall, it's not a sustainable approach.
That makes perfect sense. And before we go to your slides, let me ask just one question to Mike, as we're already getting into this. Mike, what's the most common mistake that you see in your practice that people do at this time of the year? When they have this, I'm going to change, and all the stuff that Kristina was saying. What is the most common mistake that people make trying to change everything at once?
Yeah, it's a trap. I would say the most common mistake would be just that, overburdening oneself, then of course failing to meet expectations, then feeling guilty, kind of lack of enthusiasm, getting down on yourself, and then abandoning ship. at some point, right? So it's very important if you're trying to have a behavior change, you have to take baby steps, you have to celebrate your victories, you have to do small attainable goals, and you want to get some momentum rolling rather than burden yourself down. And you want to keep your mindset strong. That's really the biggest thing as well. You should ask yourself the question, why am I purporting to make these changes, and you want to have a proper mindset. If you're thinking I'm so unhealthy, or I'm so overweight, or I'm so sluggish, and it's a very negative, like castigating oneself mindset, of course that's not sustainable. It's not psychologically healthy either, right? So if someone comes to me, I say, let's get the mindset right. Let's do it from a point of view of gratitude. You have an amazing body. It's a wonder. It can heal. It can replicate. It can think. It's extraordinary. Isn't that something? And wouldn't you want to do something to take care of it this year? So we want to get the motivation in there of gratitude and joy. Makes things small and bite-sized. Be very patient with yourself, because things never go perfectly according to plan. And then, just build on your successes and keep moving forward.
That's awesome. So, Kristina, you want to go over some of the slides and maybe the three of us can discuss them?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just see. Tech goddess that I am here, if I can share my screen.
That's okay. We won't tell anybody. Because, there's 600 people that are watching you.
I know, right? Hang on. Let's see if this will work. Okay, I think I've just shared it for myself. So that didn't work. Hang on a moment, guys.
Don't worry.
Oh, dear.
Hey, New Year's resolution. We're going to play one more with computers.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think everyone can see that now. Let's see if I can present it. There we go. I think that's got it. All right, so let's flip through and start talking a little bit more about nutrition, and because that's, at least certainly from my perspective, that's kind of the nuts and the bolts of where we begin. One thing that I would really like to bring up is a lot of people this time of the year get really, really extreme with changes in their diet. And I'm going to sound really woo-woo and naturopathic when I say this, but actually this is the worst time of the year to do really extreme detoxification, because it's the winter, and actually we have to look at grounding and nourishing and looking at foods that are really warming, because it supports us much better. Obviously, it depends very much on where you live in the world, right? But those of us more in the northern hemisphere, we're looking at winter as very nourishing and grounding, and it's not the time to do really, really aggressive cleanses and detoxes. And it's often against what a lot of people are suggesting of doing, of like New Year, New You, like dry January, detox this. It's very, very, very harsh on the body, because energetically we don't have the reserves for that. Those things, and if you think even in nature, what are the things that are growing in the spring? It's your wild garlic, it's your arugula, your dandelion. These from a herbal perspective are what actually help to cleanse the liver naturally. So that is actually, from an energetic perspective, a better time. If that is something that you want to do, is do something a little more extreme as far as a cleanse is concerned, a better time to do it. This time of the year is better at looking at, well, what am I eating? What was I eating over the holidays that maybe I had a little too much of? That I could say, instead of saying no carbs, no sugar, no, I'm going to be perfect with everything, really encourage what is more balanced for you. So certainly from my perspective, the approach would be, can we prioritize protein at every meal? And again, this will look very different for everybody based on their approach and their dietary needs. But stabilizing that blood sugar, preserving your muscle, because again, we'll need it, right, as we launch into the spring, into the summer, and really try to focus on, reducing the cravings. And when I talk about cravings, there is a difference between obviously your body craving something and also your mind craving something. So there is an important kind of what Dr. Turner was talking about on your mindset and the shift around that, and really listening to your body's needs. So that's kind of where I would start. And obviously, as you can see on the slide, there's many other things, but I think that's kind of the approach that I would go with. And please, chime in, guys, on any other suggestions or thoughts that you have around that. But that's very much where I sit this time of year in particular.
So there is no one size fits all. I mean, that's clearly what I'm hearing this, and each person is different. What do you think about this, Mike?
Yeah, I think you make a great point, Kristina. I agree. I think I'm looking at the slide, the protein, the fiber, diversity, healthy fats, it's all, in strong alignment with what's healthy, and also with some of the REACH and HSS guidelines, which is fantastic to see those. I hadn't really thought about avoiding certain dietary foods and patterns until the spring, or keeping with a certain yearly rhythm. That's very intriguing.
Yeah,
Thanks for bringing that
it's
up.
again, it's kind of it comes down to the fact that maybe we should think about eating more seasonally, maybe even thinking about eating more locally. I know that's not
Yeah.
always the easiest because we live in a world of abundance. You walk into any supermarket and everything's available. But, thinking a little bit more consciously around that. And then it becomes a shift over, is this more of a diet and that I'm approaching, or is this something that I can weave into my life because I'm really just
Mm-hmm.
nourishing my body with the really important things, your protein, your fiber diversity, the healthy fats, tremendously important, right? And again,
Mm-hmm.
this has been gone, we've been told that fats are bad, for a really, really long time. And there's certain medications that even stop that 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 we have to look at and really approach in a very open-minded way. Like, why are we actually doing this, and what is the outcome? So these are really important things that we have to look at first. Look at the diet always first before you layer all those other things. And I'll say that even outside of supplementation. And I know a lot of people are big on supplements. Oh, I'll take a pill for it. Eh, Listen, you cannot out supplement a bad diet. That's something that you really need to focus on. And it's not perfection. It's 80 to 90% of the time. Are you really looking at consistency? You nourishing your body. It's far more powerful than 100% of the time of clean eating for 3 weeks only. Okay, that's so important to remember. Okay, I put this little note on the bottom. I'm like, that never sounds so exciting, right? A boring, balanced diet done consistently beats a perfect diet done briefly, right? And this is where we come with, like, even going to the gym, for example, for 3.5 seconds, and then they're like, poof, it didn't work for me. I'll just move on. It doesn't. It's about consistency, and I know that doesn't sound exciting, but it's about that every single day, getting up and making those decisions. And starting small, like, what can you achieve now, where you are now? That's realistic. So is it you're going to write down 20 different vegetables that maybe you don't eat in a week normally and see how you can kind of incorporate that? Just start there, maybe. Or maybe you look at sometimes visually it helps, right? To writing down, like, obviously without getting too pedantic about your eating and eating habits, but writing down even how much your protein intake is and see if there is some peaks and troughs in your daily intake that you could support and optimize, and see how that actually feels. Maybe have your dinner for breakfast. This is a nice concept, right? Where you're having more of a protein rich meal as what you break your fast with, whatever time that is. So these things could be really, really tremendous, and actually they don't take huge changes, right?
But what I like the most of what you both said is that, we need to have some realistic expectations. I mean, there is no such thing that poof, weight goes off, I'm healthy back overnight. It's not going to happen. Or with a crazy 3-week fast, or I mean, I did it. I remember, when Atkins came up with the Atkins diet long time ago, you would go on these binges of zero carbs. I mean, almost no carbs. And God forbid that you took a carb, you felt like hell. I mean, it was really bad. You felt so bad at the time. So let's just have some realistic expectations. And like you said, that boring balanced diet, maybe it's going to beat some other more aggressive diets.
Yeah, agree completely. The name diets, they do have a place. I use them clinically, as necessary as part of patient's protocol, but it's usually based on something or an outcome. So maybe we've done some labs, maybe we've done a gut test, or we've done something, or organic acids, or whatever it is, and we know there is something that we need to achieve. And it's done for these diets are typically done for a shorter period of time, with the ultimate goal that we transition really into something that's much more sustainable. So while we're on those diets, the things that we're talking about is also the habits around eating that are equally as important as the food themselves, right? Are you sitting down to eat? Are you chewing your food? Are you drinking a lot of water and eating at the same time? Are you fiddling on your phone? Are you actually using a knife and fork? And this is just like blows my mind because I am European. I grew up in Toronto, but I have European parents, and my husband's British. So we lived overseas for many, many years. And you're taught, and you eat your dinner with a knife and fork. And it slows down tremendously how you eat and how much you eat and how you're chopping your food. Now, I see it all the time, and this is obviously not everybody, so I'm not lumping everyone in there, but I see it. I go out to eat all the time. People will just literally shovel food into their mouths just using a fork. So even just these slight mindset shifts, like put the phone down. You can't, if you use a knife and fork, you can't use your phone. And it gives you the space to really focus on the eating energetics around what you're nourishing your body with, and you're completely shifting that whole intention, because actually digestion starts with the intention, and then with the chewing process we will release digestive enzymes in through our mouths. Amylase production that helps us break down carbohydrates actually begins from salivary juices. So we need to chew our food so that it can signal the rest of that cascade of everything happening. So not perfection, but simple things that you can do that is really, really achievable. Just look at some of the habits that you have around eating now, and see what little tweaks you can make there. I had to bring up the knife and fork.
You have to, yeah.
I had
You
to.
have
I'm
to.
so
You
sorry. I
have
was
to.
like, oh, that had to come in because I see it all the time, and out in restaurants as well. People just eat with a fork, and I'm like, what? They'll cut a piece of steak and then they'll take this huge piece and they're like, no. I'm like, first of all, it does not look nice. Secondly, from a digestive and eating perspective, it's so terrible for your digestion. Yeah. So
I guess we are at fault also, especially us physicians. And Mike can tell you, being in residency, I mean, you eat in 5 minutes as fast as you can, whatever you can. I mean, because you don't know if you're going to
100%.
eat later or not. So I mean, these simple little interventions make a difference. Show us more slides. I know you brought a bunch, so I want to make sure we look at all of them.
Look at all of them. Okay, but our gorgeous Livio's just now I have to share my screen again. Okay, hang on. Where did they go? I think I'm gonna have to use it like this. Actually, no. Bear with me one moment, guys. Maybe we can segue into another conversation, or Mike, if you have anything that you'd like to add, and I will figure out my tech side. Oh, look, see, you're just so amazing, Livio. You're helping me. Okay, so here is, and if we can flick to the next screens, I think we will get to where we have a lifestyle impact. Okay. So this is where health is won or lost. I will say this is huge. The sleep is non-negotiable. And this really needs to be a core principle as part of our lives. Obviously, I know we started with nutrition. I had to, guys. I'm a nutritional therapist. The food is like medicine. But think of the lifestyle impact, and think of then what happens when we have sleep deprivation or we don't have the consistency around that. You will not make good food choices the next day. This is really well studied and documented. So what can we do as, again, encourage goals like consistent bedtime within 30 to 60 minutes, with variation. Obviously, there's, challenges and life challenges here, but every night, morning light exposure. Again, challenging, I know, but I think we all have 5-10 minutes where we can step outside somehow. Make sure the screens are off between 60 to 90 minutes before bed. And please don't have your phones in your bedrooms or a television in your bedroom, if that's at all possible, because it's so disruptive to good sleep hygiene. And then, really looking at then obviously what you're doing throughout the day to support that whole sleep energetic. So this is a big piece, and please chime in, both of you, if you have anything. I know Dr.
I mean,
Turner has a lot to say about sleep. So
just as a quick
Yeah.
advertisement, at the end of the month we're going to be having a webinar just on sleep. We're going to talk about both the Western approach and the traditional Chinese approach on achieving sleep, and following some of the things that you're mentioning. But I know that Mike it's also he
Yeah.
also works a lot into sleep, even though it's interesting. We're talking about sleep when neither one of the three of us does too much sleep because we work so hard.
no,
Yeah.
no, but you have you have to protect it somehow.
So Mike, talk to us.
Yeah, sure, happily. I'll gladly share my most pressing thoughts on it. One thing is that when I talk with people, I want to explain, the importance of sleep, and I can just break it down in 4 bullet points. So one of them is oxidative stress, right? So we all know the feeling of we wake up that next day, we have brain fog. Why is our brain and why is our cognition subpar at that point. It's actually oxidative stress on your brain to lack sleep. So over time, there's prolonged levels of oxidative stress throughout your body that would occur if you don't give it enough rest. Then there's metabolic changes. So interestingly enough, if you have disturbed sleep, you have insulin resistance, you have elevated blood sugar, you actually are hungrier the next day, you tend to eat more, and this is due to some dysregulation in hormones like ghrelin and others. And so there's a predisposition towards weight gain. And there have been studies that have done where you can take shift workers, and even though nothing changes in their diet or their exercise, as soon as they start their shift work, whether it's a nurse or police officer or fireman or something, they'll start to gain weight. And that's because of the hormonal dysregulation that's going on. The third thing I would say is the immune system. So the strength of your immune system. I describe it to people as like a growth spurt. You know, a child has a growth spurt and kids grow when they're asleep, not mainly when they're awake, right? Similarly, your bone marrow is pumping out, it's having a growth spurt, and it's pumping out different sorts of cells, including antibodies and different types of white blood cells. And so your immune system has a strengthening and recharging element that goes on during sleep. But if sleep is truncated, you pretty quickly have a drop-off in your immune activity. And again, there have been studies done about this. I remember reading one in med school where they took med students studying, you know, for finals and staying up late and stuff, and tested levels of immune activation and activity in their body, and then also, you know, symptomatic levels of coming down with viral respiratory infections and such. And that's just because lacking sleep tends to kill the immune system. And finally, there's hormonal and circadian changes that are very important. I'll use testosterone as an example. There was a study done where they looked at the difference between 5 and 8 hours of sleep at night was about a 20-25% less testosterone level in those men. And that's because there's a wind-up process that goes on to produce testosterone, and it peaks first thing in the morning, about 7, 8 a.m. If you truncate your sleep, the wind-up process and the output is also truncated. But there's other hormones that cycle through on a daily basis, including cortisol, as Kristina mentioned, which why it's great to get some morning sunlight. So that's the why, and I always like to spend time on that so people know. But as far as the tips of the how, I would say two things. I would say an eye shade or blackout mask is great. I sleep with one every night. Even any ambient light is alerting, and just because your eyes are closed doesn't mean your brain's not still seeing a signal, right? I would use the example of if you camp. You could be out in nature camping and you could be exhausted, but if you're just sleeping in your tent, you're going to wake up at 5 a.m. or whenever the sun rises, because those sunlight rays are going through the tent, they're going through your closed eye, they're hitting your pupil, they're going down your optic nerve, and they're alerting parts of your brain, aka suprachiasmatic nucleus, that relate to energy, and they're also ramping up adrenal function. Well, any tonic level of light is alerting your brain. It's hitting those same centers of alertness and energy. And so when you create blackout conditions, you go to much lower level of sleep. The other thing I would say is to get a sleep tracker. You know, they're ubiquitous and inexpensive at this point. You can go to Costco and get a Fitbit, right? And it'll tell you very accurately what are your stages of sleep, and it'll give you a sleep score. I find those extremely helpful for patients. It gives you feedback. And I tell people, I want you to pay attention to your slow wave sleep, which is your deep sleep, and make sure you're getting at least 60 minutes of slow wave sleep a night. If you're doing that, you're doing well. That's where most of the replenishment occurs hormonally, as far as growth hormone release, and also your immune system. So blackout eye shades every night for me, and keeping track of my deep sleep is.
I'm trying just to picture in my mind with your little blackout thingy, but
it's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's
well, I know you should ask my wife, and she's got a lot of opinions about it. I've tried different little eye masks in the past, but they always get tangled off. They're halfway off my face in the middle of the night. They're around my neck. They're terrible, right? So what I hit on is I have a pair of. It's almost embarrassing, but like imagine long underwear, a top of long underwear that's long sleeve, and I just tie that thing around my head like a bandana, and then fold it up. So I have this shirt that looks like a turban essentially, but it's blacked out like right all the way through my nose. And
oh my gosh!
For all our followers, we will have a picture of Dr.
I was going to say, I'm like, we will have photographic evidence.
We will have photographic evidence of this, because that is the most amazing webinar that we've ever had.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Yeah,
I love it. No, that's super, super, super good. Yeah, the sleep is an important one, guys. So something to consider as part of maybe that's even an achievable piece to work on as a new year resolution, shall we say, to make those realistic goals, because it really cascades into so many areas of your life. All right, we can move on maybe to our next slide. Another one, nervous system regulation. So again, coming back to maybe what we were discussing a bit earlier about mindset and shifting that. This is a really, really important piece. Okay. So obviously looking at the breath work and the exercise and walking outdoors, practicing prayer, if that's something that speaks to you, or meditation, are really vital for that nervous system, and really help to foster that resilience. But even taking that further, so much of your mindset and the conversations that you have with yourself and with your head, um, it makes a huge difference. I'm a big, big believer, and I see this all the time in clinic. What you think about, you bring about. And it's a really, really important one to remember. So if you're constantly in this negative frame, like, I can't lose weight, I can't do this, everything is this, and you're not finding positive solutions and you're not shifting that, nothing will shift. And I saw it just this week in clinic with a patient who is really struggling to lose weight, and she's been to countless clinicians. She's like, GLP-1s don't work for me, this doesn't work for me. Her mindset is tremendous. And she said, she's like, this is the first time anyone's even said to me, because I called her out on it and I said, listen, nothing's going to shift if you don't also look at your own behaviors in this. And that's a really important piece when it comes to supporting your own nervous system and then those health outcomes. So it does take some time for you on your own, and it's a really personal journey, right? To sit with that and see what this feels like. But also remember that, like, your body's not against you, right? Your body isn't against you. And we have so much within our own power, and some of that is within our minds and within our souls and our spirit to really shift our health outcomes. And a lot of that is, what will make it and break it, as far as whether you stick to things or whether you don't. So obviously, beside all of these beautiful things in there, and what Dr. Turner was talking about, the mindset is a really very important piece in this.
Well, you're talking, I mean, this is an interesting point. You're talking about the exercise. And I want to ask you, what does exercise for health actually looks like as compared to exercise that's driven by aesthetics, punishment, or health? And I mean, you both can chip in. Just give me an idea of what would be a good healthy exercise without me having to do 300 crunches or whatever, just because I need to have a six-pack.
Sure. Well, I think about incorporating, trying to get the 5 elements of a key exercise program in place for yourself. So there's strength, there's cardiovascular conditioning, there's flexibility, there's balance, there's neuromuscular control. And so trying to bring those all together as best you can, not maybe every day, maybe not even every week, right? But trying to be broad-based that way. So ping pong is a form of exercise because that's neuromuscular control, and it's amazingly good for the brain, right? Mm-hmm. Walking with your wife or husband around the neighborhood at night, tremendous, especially if you do it right after dinner. You'll blunt the glucose spike that would otherwise happen after your evening meal, right? Zumba class, there's many things, but I would say one key idea is to keep it a varied state like that. The second thing is it needs to feel fun. That's my first rule of exercise for people. I said it needs to feel fun. When you go to the gym, if it feels like a drag, that's only going to last so long. You have a subconscious mind, right? And your conscious mind is saying, I need to be there. I need to lose weight because I'm so sloppy looking and blah, blah, blah. And your subconscious mind is like feeding on that, and it's going to rebel at some point. It's you can't just kind of castigate yourself towards the progress. So I tell people, I don't care what you do, but it needs to feel fun. If it doesn't feel fun, you'll wear out, and it's not that positive environment and positive feedback loop that you want to inculcate. So for example, when I go to the gym, Joe, half the time I don't even know what I'm going to do. I don't. I'm listening to my body and I'm making sure that it feels fun. And I'm like, hey, if this is sore, I'm not going to do that. Like, oh, look at that machine. That looks fun. Oh, I need some coordination. I should go play pickleball, and I'll just hit the pickleball against the wall, or I'll go lap swimming. So I keep it fresh. As I said, I don't know what I'm going to do most of the time I go in there, and I make sure that it's fun, and I listen to my body, and I treat my body as a partner, right? And that's again, to your mindset, or the point you mentioned. when I was in my 20s, I had this concept almost like your body was your enemy, like you had to whip it into shape, you know, and like you had to like beat it down so that it could like spring back, and then you'd knock it down again like a little inflatable clown, you know, cylinder or something like that. And first of all, it's not a healthy relationship with your body, because your body keeps the score, and you know, you have a subconscious mind and emotions that's distributed through your physical body. But besides that, how many times can your body just bounce back? You know, how many times can you just overdo leg day and be limping around and just expect yourself to just bounce back, right? There's limits on that in terms of genetics and telomeres and cell metabolism and stuff. It's not infinite. So anyways, getting the right perspective of your body, it's your partner, keeping it fun, keeping it varied, it's kind of how I think about it.
Keep it fun, which is why I
Yeah.
don't go to the gym, because that's not fun.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. So yeah, but it's the movement and moving the body in a way that's organic and sustainable is super, super important. Like ridiculously important, especially as we get older, to preserve the muscle tissue, to preserve our muscle mass. It will make us tremendously more metabolically healthy long term. And isn't there something also, and Dr. Turner, maybe you can chime in this, where isn't it VO2 max? And I read this the other day, actually. VO2 max is sometimes a better predictor of your longevity and all-cause mortality, simply because it tells us basically how resilient you are from a movement perspective in your body. So grip strength
Yes.
and muscle strength and cardiovascular flexibility, shall we say. It doesn't have to be perfection, right? I'm speaking right on that one, aren't
Oh
I?
yeah,
Yep.
you're totally on the right track. Yeah. So kind of the grandfather of that was Kenneth Cooper, who actually coined the word aerobic. So back in the 70s, he was a cardiologist in Dallas, Texas, and he was also really interested in exercise physiology. And at that time, traditional medical care for a heart attack was bed rest. Okay, the idea was you just had a heart attack, your heart's fragile, vulnerable, it's not in good shape, you need to be on bed rest for a long time. And he, from his physiological studies, started to challenge that idea and actually started to have patients do active recovery after a heart attack and active, graded treadmill programs and stuff. And actually, they took him before the state medical board and accused him of malpractice and endangering patients' lives. He was embroiled in a legal challenge for a number of years to substantiate that his program was, safe, first of all. And then the thing about him was he was meticulous. He did the research. He collected all the data. So that ended up in his sort of magnum opus paper, I think it was like the late 80s, maybe early 90s, where he showed that VO2 max is correlated with all-cause mortality very predictably. And that's quite striking. The way that I explain that to patients, I say, look, you can give me a bunch of names and don't tell me anything else about the name other than their VO2 max. I don't even know how old they are, their gender, body weight, any of that. The higher those VO2 max, I can put my finger on that person and say they're more likely to be alive next year. They're more likely to be alive in 5 years. They're more likely to be alive in 10 years. Like, wow, that's startling. Yes, that's
and
what it's saying.
and it's fascinating because there is actual studies, even chromosomal studies, that actually look at the telomere, that actually tell you, how young is your body, and that correlated, I relate with the VO2 max. And it's fascinating. The higher the number, like you say, the younger you are inside and the more likely you are to survive.
Yeah. That VO2 max represents your maximal oxygen intake, as you guys know, which ultimately gets into the efficiency of energy creation in your mitochondria. Ultimately, though, obviously that means that all of your body systems are more supported, right? So if you have more mitochondrial energy capacity, your liver does a better job at liver things, right? Your kidney does a better job at kidney things, your immune system, et cetera. So you raise the level of energy output in any given physiologic system, and that's how that's reflected.
Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal. And I think just coming back again to finding joy in exercise is a really, really, really important piece. Killing yourself running on the treadmill because you have an outcome shouldn't be the goal. I'll rephrase that. Shouldn't be the goal. Look at it as more, what is something that you can sustain longer term so that you are achieving those healthier outcomes for you where you are. And that can be a lot of different things. Like I said, I'm not a gym bunny. I tried it. It's not for me. I have a wonderful, wonderful best friend who lives in Northern Ireland who I meet a couple times a week online, and we have a good old laugh. She's a personal trainer. She works with women. So pelvic health stability and all those things that are important for women who have had children, and perimenopausal, and all that phase of life. So, we have a laugh, an absolute laugh, and I've never felt stronger in my entire life. But for me to go to the gym, I just like, but my teenagers, they're all over it. They love it. And it's joy. They go together and they have a laugh and they have fun and they go like almost every day. So, it's about what is going to bring you that joy so that you actually do it longer. So if you build community even around exercise. So pickleball is a really big thing here in South Carolina. There's a lot of people out there doing it. And it's fun. It ends up being a social thing. So, find ways that you can weave it into your life, but actually then you're getting that emotional kind of feeling as a part of it too, which I think really matters.
Just like Mike was saying, just have to have fun. You have to enjoy what you're doing. I mean, it's not, I'm going to go and sit on the treadmill. What a drag to be there on the treadmill for God knows how long, just because today I have to do 5K or whatever. No, I mean, just like you said, you guys do pickleball and I do racquetball. I mean, I enjoy, like you said, the social interaction on that. It's so much fun. Yes, you get injured, you get all sorts of things. One thing that I don't do is like what Mike was saying, if one day you have a pain, you leave it alone and you work on another area. I mean, some of us would like to be playing this racket sports. Another interesting thing, Mike, that you mentioned is there is actual data that anybody that does any kind of racket sport, less chance of developing dementia. Very, very interesting. All this coordination, whether it's ping pong, pickleball, racquetball, tennis. I mean, very, very interesting.
Yeah, isn't it? I don't know a lot about that area of research, but I've heard some really tantalizing snippets and bullet points. And one of them was actually at an A4M conference, American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, a few years ago. Dr. Daniel Amen, many of you may know that name. He's kind of an expert on brain health and such. And he said the best brain game was ping pong. He said, and at that time, the state of the research was the very best game for preserving mental health and cognition was ping pong. And I don't know if they understood all the ins and outs of why that was, but it clearly was the case.
I mean, just the coordination, thinking and movement ahead. I mean, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Do we have more slides, Miss Kristina?
I do, and maybe there we go. Our magical Olivia will do it for me. So there we go. So here we go. Exercise. Here's what we were talking about. These are really the areas that if we're going to start to think about, realistic goals, think about what would be, some of the things that you can kind of incorporate into your routine. So obviously the joy piece is really important, finding things and starting off small. So instead of really daily intense workouts or over cardio, which can be as stressful as not exercising at all, and training through exhaustion or through intense fasting and these sort of things, not always the best approach. Let's try to encourage strength. So building muscle for metabolic health. So critical for our aging, our insulin sensitivity, and our hormones. Then zone 2 cardio. So walking, cycling, swimming. This is zone 2 means you bring your heart rate to a little bit higher than your resting heart rate. So you're getting that little bit of a sensation and a movement. Then we can from there look at some higher intensity interval training where you're giving yourself shorter spurts, where you're increasing your heart rate. That's a potential, but maybe that's something that you work up to. Then looking at mobility and recovery. So the yoga, the stretching, the breath-led movements, super, super, super amazing for whole health and for balancing all of this. But think about simple, sustainable movement goals. So walking daily, even starting 10, 20 minutes every day. Lift some weights twice a week. I've converted my front garage at the detriment of my poor husband, who's very upset that my front garage is now a gym with all sorts of things in there. And it's fun. It's my space. I go in there and I do my things, probably not very well, but it's what I do. And I love it. And it's how I started. And for me, it felt really uncomfortable. I'm an ex-ballerina. So lifting weights was not something, and lifting heavy weights for me was not something that, was something that I was used to or that felt comfortable in my body, but it took time and I worked my way up. And obviously I had my lovely friend from Northern Ireland that works with me and she's just wonderful. So again, not really talking about my own personal story, but just knowing that it is achievable to get there and do it slowly. So picking up little things here and there and consistently trying to do it. And match the intensity to your life stress. I think this is also really important. If you're in a really stressed place and you're going through really difficult things, maybe now's not the time to do things that are super intense, right? Maybe now's the time to do walking daily if you can do that consistently because it's a little gentler on the body. You're getting outdoors, you're getting that light, you're getting all of those things. So figuring out where you are and how that fits is the most important thing. So again, my little quote here on the bottom is you don't get healthier by breaking down your body repeatedly. And again, this talks about what Dr. Turner was saying about like how many times can we actually bounce back before our bodies say, it's not going to do that for me. All righty.
Mike, anything else that you want to add on this one?
Great presentation. I want to put in a pitch for yoga. So when I talk to patients, if I say, let's just pick one exercise that can get everything done, it's yoga, because you can get strength, flexibility, a little bit of cardio, definitely balance, definitely neuromuscular control, right? The beauty of it also is you don't have to go to the gym. It requires zero equipment, and you can do it in a minimal amount of space, the size of a beach towel, right? So if you can lay a beach towel down on your floor, you can do yoga. Oh, by the way, there's free lessons all over the internet, right? So it's very accessible, and it's tremendously beneficial. So I put in plug for that when I can. It helped me recover from a number of injuries and helped keep me active in a number of sporting endeavors.
Yeah, and it does help us prevent injuries, especially falls. I mean, that's one thing that, as we age, falls are one of the leading causes of people ending up in a hospital. And we try to avoid going to a hospital because once you go in, you're not sure you're coming out. So trying to avoid falls. I mean, that's why I'm a big believer, and I give a lot of advice to my patients to proceed and try to do as much yoga as they can.
Do you know that women will lose 1/3 of their bone mass and bone density on the onset of menopause? That is tremendous. So the movement or trying to find ways to preserve that mass and that muscle tissue is so important.
I wanted to bring out another connection between exercise and brain health. And I remember I was doing some research and I started to come across these studies where they would give people cognitive tests. For example, matching names and faces, right? 15 random names and faces. And then you take a 20-minute break. And half of those people for 20 minutes just sat in a chair and did nothing, stared at the wall. The other half got on a stationary bike and rode, doing some zone 2 cardio, right? Then they came back, repeated the test. And this has been done in many different ways. A cognitive task done right after exercise outperforms one of the non-exercisers. So there's a cognitive boost immediately after, and it lasts for several hours on the basis of exercise. And furthermore, they've gone farther to see why this might be, what would the mechanism be. And the answer seems to be two things. One is called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So BDNF, I like to say, colloquially, is like miracle grow for the brain. It's like fertilizer for the brain. So BDNF promotes neural connections, especially in the areas of memory and learning. And so BDNF levels are stimulated by that bout of cardiac exercise. And the other thing is just overall circulation, right? So your brain is circulation dependent in some sense. And if you're not getting good blood flow anywhere, that's affecting your brain. But if you're getting great blood flow everywhere, that's also a boost to your brain. I use the metaphor of a dimmer switch. So an exercise hits the dimmer switch full on in terms of circulation to your brain. And so I always thought that was striking, like, wow, you're actually higher IQ after a bout of exercise, even something as simple as riding a stationary bike for 20 minutes or so. And that, yes, that's been substantiated.
It's fascinating.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love it.
Okay.
All right. Are we moving on to our next slide? Okay.
So that's probably the most important part. Eh? That's the one that we were talking about. You said on January 1st, you go to the gym, it's packed. And January 5th, nobody shows up.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay. So I'm sure we've talked about this and we've touched on it and we, brought it up about consistency. But it is actually the most underrated tool and there's nothing glamorous about it. It can be really boring. It's not something that you get to show on Instagram or on, to tell your friends that you're doing this, that, and the other. It is what you're doing day in and day out. And if you can stick to things, that really beats the intensity of everything every single time. And what does consistency actually mean? Is doing enough most days, and allowing for flexibility and for variation, because life does happen, and also maybe returning to habits after there's disruption. And this takes a little bit of self-awareness and some self-control. Um, and energy, certainly. But it's an important one to come back to remember that, disruptions are natural in life, but can we ping back? And that goes the same with dietary approaches and eating energetics. There will be time, like our Christmas period, for example, where we get a little bit loosey goosey, right? But can we come back to bring that pendulum back into a more balanced state? And that's really the goal. And removing guilt from food and movement,
Mm-hmm.
because this is so, so important. I think people beat themselves up something horrible that, oh, I was on the treadmill for an hour and I haven't lost any weight. I haven't done this. I haven't done that. And it's just not the way that it should be. Your movement is medicine. Your food is medicine. These are things that you're giving your body, that you're nourishing your body. And maybe the outcome isn't necessarily straight, like instantaneous, but give it some space, give it some time, give it to kind of organically fuse its way into your life so that it does remain consistent, and it is something that then you realize, actually, this feels great. This feels good in my body. This feels good in my life, and it's something that you can stick to more longer term. I love this non-zero day concept. So even on hard days, you're still doing something, a little something. And I actually have a slide on on our non-zero day, the concept and what that means. So we can talk about that in a moment. But just remember that even on those really difficult days, you can still do a little something, like nourish yourself with a good meal, take a short walk, go to bed a little bit earlier, drink water, step outside, get some fresh air, put your phone down for a minute and give yourself a moment to just, you know, it's a psychological sigh where you're inhaling and really letting it go. These are really profound things that you can do even on those really hard days, that keeps those actions moving forward, so that the goals don't feel like I did it and then I lost, or I did it and then I failed.
Mm-hmm.
Anything
It's
that you
very.
want to add, Mike, before we go to the next slide?
I just had one thought. I love it. The idea of building consistency. My thought was, it could be helpful to do some introspection and try to identify why you're not consistent with some of these health habits right now, why you're not consistent, right? We know you want to be consistent, you want to do some more things, but if you're unaware of why it's not happening currently, it's going to be very difficult to change that, right? There's a reason why it's not happening currently in your life. Like, why are you not getting enough water every day? Why are you not getting enough sleep? And if you just say, I'm going to get enough sleep, but you never really move that rock that inhibited you in times past, it's going to sabotage. So you might, for example, say, I want to eat less fast food, and you find yourself going out for fast food in the afternoons. That's a bit of a difficult goal, though, if you don't address why you're doing that in the first place. And if you look at the why, it may be because you didn't pack a lunch, right? Which was because, you didn't get up early enough in that morning. And so it actually might trace back to that. So it's sort of looking at why the thing isn't happening so far, and then trying to eliminate friction, identify those frictional points, and try to move those to enable yourself to be more fluidly successful.
Yeah,
Okay. You have more slides?
I think I do. Okay, so this
Yeah,
is the non-zero day concept. So we'll just fly through this really, really quickly. So the non-zero day is any day where you do something in the direction of your health goals, even if it's really small. So a zero day is doing nothing at all. But a non-zero day is one intentional action, and that's it. It's actually a really simple concept. And maybe this is
Mm-hmm.
something that you can sit with and say, look, I'm not failing. Okay, my goal was to go to the gym, but I missed one day or I missed 2 days, but I did this. I went for a walk, or, I have an exercise band or something like that at home, or I did 45 seconds of squats between Zoom calls. Perfect. Why not? Let's do it. Or every 20 minutes I got up and I walked around and I took some time and I, looked 20 feet away or something like that to recalibrate the brain. So think about it more as it's a non-zero day. It's not like you failed this day. You're still doing something that's towards those goals. But as Dr. Turner says, it is intentional, right? So think about what are the things that you want to do, what you want to achieve, what you think is maybe even achievable for you. This takes some time to sit with that and feel that. Where you are right now and where you can start. And if it means that, I mean, I'll tell you, I know the exercises that I have to do. I will not do them in the mornings before a work day because I have 20 other things on my mind that I need to get done unless I know I have someone accountable for me, my Vicky, who I meet with a couple times a week. Otherwise, I simply won't do it. And I know that about myself. And because I get very easily distracted and I wake up, at 6 a.m, I'm like, oh, last thing I want to do is go into my gym and lift weights and do hard things. But actually, I feel so much better because I'm looking forward to seeing her. And like I said, I know those exercises. I've been doing them for eons and eons. I can potentially do them on my own, but I won't. So finding what is holding you back, and kind of what are the things that are limiting you are really important. And I totally went off on a tandem. That's not really talking about non-zero days, but it is part of that whole intention of still working towards something and towards those goals.
Yeah, Mike, anything else that you want to mention here? Because we're getting close to the end of our show, and I want to make sure we have time for some questions.
No, let's carry on.
Well, then let's just have the last slide.
This is our last slide. So there we go, guys. This is connecting those dots, right? Think of the body as an ecosystem. No system is running singularly. Okay. And it sometimes gets very frustrating. Obviously we have lots of different doctors that specialize in lots of different areas, and you have to go to one person for this thing and one person for that thing. That is obviously a very different approach, but we still have to look at the body as a whole. This is an ecosystem. It's not a collection of, a symptom. So think of all of your systems in your body, like your gut health, your hormonal rhythm, your immune system resiliency, your detox capacity, which is working for you consistently, your mental and your emotional health, and around all of that, set practical priorities. So what are you going to do to support your digestion before even layering supplements in? What are you going to do to stabilize that blood sugar? How are you going to calm the nervous system before you look at hormones? Build the foundations before the biohacking tools. That's, I guess, my little takeaway, or hopefully the little end piece that I'm giving,
which is
those basics. Look at the basics, this beautiful system.
Anything that you want to add, Mike, before I bring in our lovely Autumn, who's going to be asking questions?
Let's bring on the questions.
Okay, Autumn, they are all yours. Let's get some questions, because I know that, so that you guys know, I've been watching the comments, and everybody's super excited. I mean, this is one of those webinars where everybody is entrained, everybody's asking questions, and they're discussing things. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah, we got a lot of questions, so I'll try to go through them in speed round. An anonymous attendee asked, can you talk about treating sleep apnea with a more holistic approach versus medical interventions such as a CPAP machine?
Mike, that's yours.
Sure. My first option would be a mouthpiece. There are certain off-the-shelf mouthpieces that you can buy off of Amazon, for example, or you can get them custom fitted from an orthodontist. The idea of these is that it pulls your lower jaw forward. When the low jaw comes forward, your airway opens up. So I've had many people minimize their sleep apnea on the basis of a good-fitting mouth guard, essentially, that pulls their lower jaw forward. There are certain pillows as well. I'm sort of a little more plus minus on those, skeptical, but they're sold as, they'll position your head in a certain way that opens up the back of your throat, etc. Possible. There is a nice option of laser treatment, by the way. So there's something called Night Lase, Night, L-A-S-E. You can look that up. And it's a machine, and they'll go back and do basically laser resurfacing on the back of your throat and palate to open up the airways. I've had many patients say that was successful, and they actually got off their CPAP. But it does have to be repeated, maybe every 4 or 6 months, something like that. The tissue will tend to grow back slowly.
And there are a couple of other things that people have done. I mean, they are a device that's called Excite that you put in the mouth. It gives electric shocks to your tongue so that you get a stronger tongue. It's like taking the tongue to the gym. you do that for 42 days, and supposedly that gets the tongue stronger, and you have less episodes of sleep apnea. But again, sometimes even minimal interventions, Mike. I mean, I tell my patients, just go ahead and get your spouse to sew a tennis ball in the back of your t-shirt, so that when you lay flat, you can't lay flat, so you sleep more on your side. That gives you less episodes of sleep apnea. So there are a lot of things that people can do instead of using those nasty CPAP machines.
I would also look at some Bukato breathing techniques. Those can be really, really helpful. So looking at, retraining even through the day, often that can be tremendous in the evening. And I would absolutely 100% look at your blood sugar regulation and your insulin, because that plays a huge role.
Another question, we got a couple questions. What are your thoughts on oxalates? Katie said, so much of my health diet, it's in so much of my health diet, and I am now learning it shouldn't be. So another question, just what are your guys' thoughts on oxalates?
Okay, so oxalates are an anti-nutrient that is a compound that's found in a lot of different foods, just like tannins, just like phytates, like many other ones. Okay, it is there naturally to protect the plant and the plant compound, essentially. Okay, now what oxalates need is enough calcium and magnesium in the body in order to break that down. And then remove it from the body. If oxalates build up, and this can be for many reasons. So if there's some yeast overgrowth or there's some fungal exposure, I see it a lot in my mold patients, that they have really high oxalates, and they're not actually eating oxalate heavy diets, but we're seeing it in an organic acids test. Sometimes this is more of a broader picture and less about the oxalates than themselves. So it again takes a little bit of a broader approach, but when we're looking at daily dietary intake of it, making sure that you're pairing your foods, how you're preparing your foods, really tremendously degrades that oxalate content or all the anti-nutrient content. So like soaking your beans and even rinsing and soaking your rice, so it reduces your arsenic. Like all of these things, there's so many things and little tips and tricks that you can do so that you're really supporting the digestive function and the ability to break these down. But it should and can be part of a normal diet. It's just obviously is a very individual approach, and it depends really on your clinical picture. It may not just be the oxalates; it may be something else going on too that's actually driving that and being a problem.
A question for Dr. Turner. We got a bunch of questions on how do I increase my VO2 max? How do I find out what my VO2 max is? I'll let you take those.
Yeah, sure. So you can find out how it is with some of those wrist-based fitness monitors. Those actually are quite helpful. Oh, Dr. Varon, thank you. On cue. Right. They have a, estimate my VO2 max function on there. That's pretty helpful. It's not the gold standard. The gold standard, however, is quite cumbersome. You have to go into a lab. They put a mask on your face, right? They run you on the treadmill till you get exhausted and you tell them to stop. They measure all the gas intake and outtake, etc. So it's a bit of a big lift. Most people don't have access to that, but the fitness watches have become fairly accurate. They've got some algorithms. I don't know how they do that, but they're pretty credible that way. So that's easy and most accessible. And then how you increase it, there's debate sometimes about like zone 2 versus, let's say, zone 4 or 5 levels of cardio, right? And which one's better for endurance and VO2 max and all that. It does, the data seems to go back and forth on it, but I will say you do want to at least get some higher intensity exercise in there to boost the VO2 max. Again, keyword max. So when they test you on the VO2 max, it's your max. You have to tell them, I'm exhausted and I stopped the treadmill now, or something bad's about to happen. Like that's when the test ends. So if you want to increase your max, that's your highest RPM zone. You got to rev your engine. If you got to push that boundary and keep that engine revved up every so often. So if you have no equipment, we're talking things like burpees, right? Box jumps, or you can jump up and down on a park bench. You can jump on a park bench, jump down, do a push-up. That kind of thing, right? Throw some jumping jacks in there. You need to get out of breath. If you have a machine, one of my favorite is those fan bikes, right? So you're punching and kicking with your legs at the same time on one of those like CrossFit style fan bikes. Those are extraordinarily good. They'll exhaust you in a moment's notice. So got to get some high intensity in there every so often.
Fantastic. And on the line of nutrition, JD asked if you guys could discuss GMO in cheeses. He said roughly 90% of cheese contains a lab-made enzyme developed by Pfizer, and it does not have to be labeled. Are you guys familiar with this in cheeses or have any thoughts on it?
I'm not familiar with that, unfortunately.
Dr. Turner or Dr.
No.
Varon, the next
No,
question?
no, just go to the next question because we're going to have to research that and we'll get back to you with that one.
Yeah, I mean, you said Pfizer, and I'm just like, roll my eyes straight away.
I
I'm
mean,
like,
we all roll our eyes when we heard that word.
I'm like, okay, next.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it pretty, it's kind of popular in the news stream right now. So it definitely would be something interesting for IMA to look into.
Yeah, I will research that one for sure.
Bob Fox asked, any observations on sending your MRIs, X-rays, and blood panel tests to Elon Musk's Grok AI online for free to review one's results? What are your guys' thoughts on this? Basically using AI as a...
So, having worked a lot on AI in the past few years and at the present time and writing a lot about it, be careful. Be very careful because AI requires human oversight. That is a problem. AI is going to give you an answer based on whatever the AI has. And sometimes they don't get the whole thing. For example, I tend to send the images to my medical students on WhatsApp, and within 2 seconds, they all come up with amazing diagnosis. And most of the time, they're wrong. And they're wrong because they don't know the details about what's going on. So everything on AI is directly dependent on the information that you are putting into the AI. Just giving a series of numbers without putting in context what's going on with the patient does not work.
Yeah, I've also heard people have got wrong results too. Like doctors have cross-checked it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It does make mistakes. I've done lots of tests on it, like just, dummy labs and things like that. It doesn't get it always right. So I would just be really cautious with that. And it can be an incredible tool. You can get lots of information and things, but again, it's nuanced, and just take it with a grain of salt and just cross-check it, because it does make mistakes. It's not perfect. But then neither are humans either, right? So
last question, I'll just combine these two since we're already 7 minutes over. An anonymous attendee asked, does zinc help regulate blood sugar? And then Renee also asked if zinc sulfate 50 milligrams per day could raise testosterone levels.
ooh, that's high. That's quite high. And I wouldn't just look at zinc alone for testosterone. Personally, I would look at all the other cofactors. Zinc, if really taken in really high amounts for long periods of time, can displace copper because it's a complementary nutrient. So we have to look at that as well. And lots of issues can happen with copper deficiency, and you need very minimal amounts of copper, but still long-term amounts of like over supplementing with zinc is not necessarily would be my approach. It would be more multifaceted for hormone support. From a blood sugar regulation, it wouldn't be my first go-to. It can be helpful, but zinc is very dependent on good stomach acid as well. So how are you using it and breaking it down matters from a digestive function. So from a blood sugar perspective, I would look at diet first, 100%. And then there's some other really incredible things that you can look at, like some chromium and some potentially, if indicated, berberine we could look at.
Berberine.
Yeah, these sort of things. But I would always look at diet first, because you can do tremendous amount of support there from balancing blood sugar just from food alone.
I'll say real quickly, I do like zinc for immune system support and also anti-cancer activity. And so when I treat cancer patients, we check a blood level of zinc, make sure it's at an optimal level for anti-cancer effects. As far as testosterone, where it's been shown is really only in hypogonadal situations and people who are zinc deficient, right? So if you're kind of mid-range on your zinc level and you're kind of mid-range on your testosterone, it's not going to do anything. There are other things I would use for testosterone, like boron, for example, is great. I also like an herb called Tongkat Ali. Those tend to be my preferred methods to try to get testosterone up naturally.
Awesome.
Before I move over to our closing announcements, is there any closing thoughts or anything that you guys would like to leave our audience with?
Well, I want to thank our two panelists, which did an amazing job. I mean, I'm telling you, I've hosted God knows how many of these webinars, but the energy that you guys had behind the scenes, I mean, people were really excited about the things that you mentioned, and I want to make sure that you guys are going to come back for another episode of what to do to get your health back in order, because this was super interesting. I want to thank you, Kristina, for everything. Mike, do you have any closing comments that you guys want to make?
Well, I'll just say I was emotional as this started. I was looking at the chats, right? And it's like, hello from such and such place, you know? And I'm like, wow, this is something. People from all over. I saw Adelaide, Australia. I saw Tokyo, right? I saw England, just a few of them, you know, Connecticut, you know, Maine, New Orleans, all this. And I'm like, wow, all these people gathering together all over the world. That's something. Like, what a credit to IMA and FLCCC, Dr. Varon, Dr. Merrick, Dr. Corey, others who like put this and built this together. Here we are all over the globe, coming together to talk about this stuff. I think it's amazing.
It's been, you know, we've been doing this for 6 years every Wednesday.
Yeah,
and we haven't stopped, and you know, we keep on having lots of people from all over the place, and it's you know, the team behind the scenes that puts all this together also is to be commended for what we do.
Yeah, agree. Totally agree.
Let's do this again. I'll love to come back anytime. This is fun, and I hope all the listeners out there that you feel inspired, educated. You know, it's possible to make some amazing health changes for yourself in 2026. You know, make it your healthiest year ever, and draw on all of our resources to support you to get there.
That's awesome.
Agree.
Thank you both so much. Dr. Varon, I know you have our first closing announcement on the childhood vaccine schedule, so I will let you take that first slide.
Awesome. So as you guys know, we recently had new recommendations by HHS. They revised the childhood vaccine schedule. And actually, we are finally aligning with other first world countries, you know, and international best practices. For more than 2 decades, the childhood vaccine schedule expanded into really a variety of pharmaceutical offerings. I mean, kids were getting a variety of vaccines for no good reason. Hepatitis B is probably, to me, the one that was most important. But, you know, this week, the HHS has taken a decisive step toward restoring balance. We are now to a lower number of vaccines. But, you know, parents, if they wish to give the other vaccines to their kids, they have the right. And again, one of the things that we do at AMA is help people make decisions. That freedom of choice that you have has to be a freedom of choice based on data. So we look at the data, you talk to your healthcare provider, and then you do what's right. So we are very pleased. And like I said earlier on this webinar, finally, we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Vaccines first, today nutrition guidelines second. So things can just get better from now on.
Thank you so much, Dr. Varon. And thank you for doing such a wonderful job hosting tonight.
Thank you.
All right, as we talked a lot about on this webinar, ultra-processed foods, it still makes over 60% of the American diet, according to the CDC. Outdated dietary guidelines continue to shape school lunches and hospital meals. The results haven't changed. Chronic illness remains the norm, with nearly 1 in 2 Americans living with a chronic illness. That is why the MAHA movement continues to matter, bringing the focus back to real food, prevention, and nutrition as medicine. And while MAHA may feel new, IMA has been laying the groundwork for this for years. The IMA Nutrition Library is already available, living, growing resource for food-based healing, disease prevention, and everyday nourishment. If you're overwhelmed or unsure where to start, this is your place. You can visit imahealth.org/IMA Nutrition Library. Join us, join us for the 2026 IMA Medical Education Conference, Emerging Trends in Medicine, a 2-day gathering dedicated to the latest innovations, research, and forward-thinking practices shaping the future of medicine and healthcare. This event offers a dynamic program of expert-led lectures, networking opportunities, and hands-on learning through Abstract Alley and much, much more. You can get your tickets at imahealth.org/conference. Well, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. And before we formally close, we wanted to share a short clip featuring IMA Senior Fellow in Pediatric Cardiology and Chairman of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, Dr. Kirk Milhone. In this clip, Dr. Milhone discusses the recent shifts in U.S. vaccine policy and the importance of evaluating vaccine safety and risk, and why parents must feel empowered to advocate for their children. We'll take a look, and we will see you all next week. Thank you so much.
And right now, there's a new major shift in U.S. vaccine policy. The CDC's Vaccine Advisory Committee has voted to end the universal hepatitis B shot for newborns when mothers test negative for the virus. Joining us now is Dr. Kirk Milhone, a pediatric cardiologist, senior fellow with the Independent Medical Alliance, and also the newly appointed chair of the CDC's Vaccine Advisory Committee. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me on.
Well, first, Dr. Milhone, just describe for us the overall approach you and the committee are taking to kind of like evaluate vaccine safety.
I think that's the key word is safety, is that in order to be able to test safety and look at safety, you have to specifically design studies to look at safety. And safety is a subjective term. So what we like to prefer to talk about is risk. Okay. What is the risk of a disease? What is the risk of the preventative treatment, let's say a vaccine, and is that individualized to the patient, or what we've seen in the past is more of a one-size-fits-all as opposed to looking doctor-patient relationship, what is that patient, what is best for that patient?
And that's where obviously the hepatitis B changes kind of come into play. Now, the advisory committee does not issue mandates. It simply gives recommendations. But keeping that in mind, what changed in this guidance, and why did the committee support something that you kind of just touched on, a more individualized approach?
Yeah, I think that we just make recommendations. That's true. We can't set policy. That's done by the CDC and others. But our concern is that our recommendations were being used as mandates. And that is, this one size fits all was being used to put people at risk who had really no risk from a disease. And so that is where you see the change in our attitude. It's really trying to bring back the balance to doctor-patient relationship and what is best for the patient.
And you talk about the hepatitis B, what this was universal, now that's obviously changed, or that was a recommendation.
Exactly. What we've actually done is put the power back in the hands of the doctor and the patient. We still, if the mother is positive, if there's concerns, they can still get it. The doctor still has the choice to get it. No funding has changed. Right. All we've done is said we've done more of a risk-based analysis and felt this was still got the same results but was safer for the child.
And what's interesting about this is for mothers obviously who tested negative in the first place.
Absolutely. We're sure that they're negative and there are no other extenuating circumstances would put that child at risk.
Now, you have emphasized here the value of diverse expertise on these committees. When you say that, what exactly are you talking about? What voices do you think may have been weighted less, and how is this beneficial all the way around?
Well, yeah, I think science is a constant state of evaluating and reevaluating, and that's what's healthy. I go to national conferences, worldwide conferences, and we're always talking about pro cons. There's always okay, well, I like to do it this way, or I like to do it this way, and that is part of science. There's no settled science in vaccine. There are new conditions, new situations with hygiene, new situations with gut biome. There are so many different things to look at. Changing immigration practices, changes of risks and benefits. And so it's fair to have these good, robust discussions. And you see that way. We don't always have unanimous decisions or unanimous votes. I think that's healthy.
Now, when you talk about some of these national medical organizations have chosen not to participate in the recent review process and have publicly disagreed with some of these recommendations, we know this. For parents who are trying to make sense out of this, because this is a lot happening for them and they have some decisions to make, what should they know about trust, transparency, and even moving forward?
Well, I think what you need to do is, are people willing to ask questions and answer all your questions without just sort of blowing them aside and say, oh, it's already settled. It hasn't been settled. And so parents should seek out information. It's their child. It's not the public health's child. It's their child. And so as a loving parent, feel free to ask the questions. Why does my child need this? What benefits are there and what risks there are? And I like all the national organizations to come alongside. We're not afraid of discussions. We invited 2 very highly vaccinologists to come and be a part of the meeting, and they refused. We're not afraid of debate.
Now, looking ahead, as the U.S. takes a fresh look at these childhood vaccine recommendations, what should we expect? What should parents expect just looking ahead?
I think you should expect to see that we are going to look at the data, and they were going to be honest with the data, and we're going to be transparent with the data. And what we're trying to do is decrease the risk to your child and maximize the benefit. That's what we're trying to do. We have no other agenda except maximizing the benefit and limiting the risk as much as possible.
All right, pediatric cardiologist, senior fellow with the Independent Medical Alliance and the newly appointed chair of the CDC's Vaccine Advisory Committee, Dr. Kirk Milhoan, thank you so much for joining us. And we have some information right up there where people can log onto this website and get more information. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, Angela.